So we're going to get started. Just to let you know, there's Wi-Fi information posted up on the walls because there's no reception here. In terms of questions for our panelists, because we will have a Q&A period at the end, you can scan the QR code there. We're going to be using something called Slido, where you can enter your questions there, and then we'll have the Q&A session at the end. And then once the Q&A portion is over, we'll have a networking reception just kind of outside around the corner. So with that, I will pass it off to Yara Murad, who is the Assistant Director at the Sam Ferris Institute for Public Policy and International Affairs here at the American University of Beirut, and Manager of the Refugee Research and Policy Program at IFI. So Yara, over to you.
Good afternoon, and on behalf of the Sam Ferris Institute for Public Policy and International Affairs at the American University of Beirut and our colleagues at the Embassy of Canada, we'd like to welcome you here today for our talk and discussion on the impacts of the Lebanese immigration in the current context. We're very excited to be hosting this event, especially on a topic that's very timely, very relevant amidst this mass out-migration that the country has been witnessing. Lebanon has been enduring a history of immigration, with the last wave largely triggered by the financial and economic collapse, compounded by the COVID pandemic, the devastating effects of the Beirut blast, and of course the deep political uncertainty. During 2022, the number of people who left the country rose more than 3 times from the year earlier. And a very common question asked by Lebanese today is, are you still in Lebanon? So today, along with our esteemed panelists, we seek to address and discuss various aspects and impacts, both negative and positive, that this immigration has, especially in light of the successive political and social crises. I would like to thank Matthew, Francesca, Samantha, of course, from the Embassy for this wonderful, smooth, and hopefully fruitful collaboration, and we look forward to our work together further. And now I would like to welcome Ambassador of Canada to Lebanon, Her Excellency Stephanie McCullum. We're very honored to have you here with us today.
Merci beaucoup. Merci tout le monde, et merci d'être venu. I'm very happy to be here today and to see actually such a great turnout for what promises to be an interesting and engaging event. The Embassy is very pleased to be collaborating with the Sam Ferris Institute for Public Policy and International Affairs on this very timely and necessary discussion on the impacts of migration from Lebanon, as you just heard. Together we can do meaningful work. Canada is proud to work with great partners like the IFI in order to support these types of initiatives. While it's the biggest issue raised with me, I want to highlight that we're not only interested in issuing visitor visas, but we are also very keen to work with our partners in Lebanon to understand the movement and the migration of people, and that's why we're here today. So to that end, we're proud to support forums that bring experts together to discuss these issues and to unite practitioners, stakeholders, and organizations that are looking at the same issues with us to create fruitful and meaningful dialogue. So as you heard from Sam, we encourage you to ask questions, to profit from this opportunity of all being together, and to connect with new contacts either during the Q&A session or at the reception that you heard about. Alors, merci beaucoup et bonne discussion à tout le monde.
I'm Matthew Parody. I'm the Migration Program Manager here at the Embassy of Canada. Just echoing what our ambassador has said, we're very excited to have this event today. This is the second such panel discussion we've held in the last year or so. Last year we did one on the economic impact of the impact of the economic crisis on the refugee population here in Lebanon. This topic came to us because of trends we were noticing in our work. Just to throw out some numbers, last year there was a 330% increase in the number of Lebanese persons going to Canada under our economic permanent resident programs. There was also a 338% increase in students and workers. So obviously we all knew about talking to our Lebanese friends and colleagues about what was going on, but when that matched up very much against the raw data we were seeing in our program. So we're very interested today to bring together such a interesting group of people to talk about this important subject. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, everyone. So without further ado, I will invite our moderator and our panelists to the stage. So our moderator today is Dr. Joseph Bahout, the director of the Issam Ferris Institute for Public Policy and International Affairs, and an associate professor of practice in the PSPA department at the American University of Beirut.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Good evening, fellow panelists. In fact, as I won't add much to the introduction that was made, especially by Yara Murad, IFI's assistant director. Just allow me to say that I'm both, in a way, glad and honored that we are hosting this event, and I thank you, Mrs. Ambassadors, for that, and the entire crew of the Canadian Embassy, because this is a very important topic, but also somewhere I feel also a little bit sad because we're going to talk about a subject that is today becoming a sort of drain, if not a plague for Lebanon. I mean, people are leaving, mainly youth, educated. The country is in fact, losing its best and brightest. That said, it's not new, and we'll talk about it. This is a very long-term phenomenon. Lebanon has always been an exporter of people. It contributed somewhere to the success story of the country. This is why we can also take pride in that. But at the same time, there's something also to be mainly examined and criticized a little bit in our model that leads our youth to leave this country for a better future. Without further ado, I will introduce the panelists, because for this topic we have a really stellar panel, people who will approach this question from different angles, each from their own specialty and focus of work. We're very honored today to have with us Mr. Dani Samaha first, who's a professor of law at Notre Dame University and the current dean of the Faculty of Law and Political Science. And this faculty is important for our matter because it hosts also the Lebanese Research Center for Migration and Diaspora Studies, of which the director is also here, and I say hi to him. Then we have with us, and we're very honored as IFI, Dr. Lina Shwairi, who's the American University of Beirut's deputy provost. Lina is also, and prior to that, a professor of linguistics in the Faculty of Arts and Science in the English department. She has been there since year 2000, and she will address this issue mainly from the angle of higher education, the impact of emigration on higher education. And we here at AUB, and Lina will talk about it much better, are directly impacted by this phenomenon, the loss of students, the loss of faculty, the loss of doctors, etc., etc. Talking about doctors, we're also very happy to have Mrs. Randa Rustom with us. She's a founding partner and the deputy managing director of Apis Health, a consultancy on healthcare, and Mrs. Rustom has had a very long experience in the sector of healthcare, both on issues of human resources, clinical operation, and also nursing. And last but definitely not least, Dr. Ali Faqih, a good friend also of us here at IFI. Dr. Faqih is the chair of the economics department at LAU, Lebanese American University. I hope we won't enter in a comparison of who's losing more talents between AUB and LAU. We have enough fields of competition between the two universities. Dr. Faqih holds also, besides his professorship at LAU, various fellowship positions, mainly at the very well-known economic research forum with which also we collaborate here at IFI. And he will tackle the issue from the economic point of view, both the losses for Lebanon, but also probably somewhere also the gains for this country. Let me start with you, Dr. Samaha, since you will approach this issue from a historical perspective, a historical angle. As we said in the introduction, Lebanon, at least since the middle of the 19th century, is a country of emigration, not of immigration. It has a long history of exporting people, first to Latin America, then maybe to Africa, later on to Europe, North America, and lately to Australia. And I salute here Mr. Ambassador, who also honors us by attending this conference. How to make sense of this phenomenon in what we say in French, the longue durée, the long duration. What are the trends? What are the elements of continuity in this emigration, and what is new in the latest sequence of emigration?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. Okay. Thank you for inviting me. Actually, as you said, I'm the Dean of the Faculty of Law and Political Science at NDU. And to that faculty, we have a research center that is the LERD, the Lebanese Emigration Research Center, that works principally on the emigration and the evolution of emigration during time. Well, what you have said is true. The emigration started in Lebanon in the 19th century, but yet we have peaks, actually. It goes up and down depending on the political situation, economical situation, and all the crises that we have. And we all know that in Lebanon we're good at that. We can create as many problems as you want. We don't know how we solve them. So it started at the 19th century. It was basically South America, North America, Australia, and a bit of Africa also. Then it moved after the Lebanese war at 1975. We're starting to have more Europe, Western Europe, not Eastern Europe. And also, we kept on going United States, Canada, Australia. That's the regular ones, I mean, with the evolution of time, because they're big countries, they're evolved countries. So we kept on going to Canada, to Australia, to the States, and to Africa, but with this new start and with a new evolution marking the Arab countries or the MENA region, Middle East and North Africa region, with the oil evolution and the financial situation and the need of money. So I think the reasons of that and why it was like that, we're a small country. We have a bunch of educated people at a high level. We have excellent universities such as AUB, LAU, NDU, to name a few. And we don't have enough market. So we travel or they leave Lebanon to get a better salary, a better position, a better opportunity, and maybe a better quality of life also. Some would come back, others would never come back, but it had been a trend during time that all the time Lebanese have a tendency to leave, and sadly in the last years, after the sad August 4 event or blast, a lot of people had left, and we have seen a rise, as you have said correctly, of immigrants who are not willing to come back, and this is sad. So historically, this is how it went. It started in the 19th century, as I said, and it evolved. It goes up and down, and now we're, I think, at a peak. I hope at a peak. I hope it will go down because there's a brain loss. It's a brain draining loss. We have lost more than 5,000 doctors. At the universities, we have lost 1,500 full professors or doctors at different universities. I think AUB, NDU, and LAU would have felt that. We have lost a lot of professionals, a lot of educated people. They were estimated actually at 74% of the people who are emigrating. They have all at least a university degree. 74%, it's a big number. Out of them, it was before 75, it was mostly men, to talk about gender. It was like 82% men. Now we're having almost 48% women and 52% men. So they're equally emigrating because historically we used not to accept very easily the idea of a woman emigrating alone, maybe not married or with her family to build her career, to have an experience. Now it changed. That's a positive thing, I mean, for the right of women, but sadly we're not only losing men, now we're losing also women and brilliant ones. So this is how I would summarize the situation.
Thank you, Dr. Smaha. In fact, maybe in a second round, I'll come back to you with certain more granular question about the differences between previous waves of emigration and more recent one, mainly regarding the level of education of migrants, of people who are leaving. I have this feeling, the specialists, that previous waves, you could see people, and maybe here Dr. Fakih later on could add to that, people who were less tooled and less, let's say, educated, and now we have a more educated cohort who is leaving, which is adding to the problem of exactly the question of excellence and education in the country. An excellent transition to come to you, Dr. Shwairi, seen from AUB, which is, I think, a very, sensitive laboratory for this question, but also more globally, in Lebanon. How can you rate this, or how can you read this on the higher education level? What is the impact of immigration? What is the loss? And are we benefiting in return from some of that?
Thank you for the question, and I want to start by giving a disclaimer that I'm not an expert on higher education in particular, even though I am an administrator here at AUB, and so I'm an expert of AUB, if you want. So I will shy away from the grand narratives about higher education, but I believe also, as a linguist, even though it's not another life, it's a parallel life that I lead, that we need, at the granular level, we can learn some generalizations and then look at other examples and see whether we can build a grand narrative from the ground up rather than from the top down. So what I would say is that I think, and I was thinking about this while I was preparing my presentation, and I was thinking that maybe the way higher education was built in Lebanon, and that's a hypothesis that I would like to test, was actually, it was built on the shoulders of immigration. And I think it resulted from immigration. It is also something that we relied heavily on after the August 4 blast, where the partners, whether they were collaborators, but also alumni who were still in touch, were actually forthcoming in trying to help us connect and stay connected to the global conversation and in higher education. So I will describe a little bit the impact of the crisis on our student enrollment and on faculty retention, and what are the mitigation measures that we are adopting to support the continued delivery of quality education or quality higher education in Lebanon. So according to the recent AUB facts and figure, AUB has almost 77,000 alumni who live in more than 115 countries around the world, and some of those are medical students. And I thought that my colleague will not talk about medical students per se, but about the health sector, so I decided to stop for a moment to mention medical students briefly, and as a special group, since also one of our own, Dr. Elil Ael, has published a series of studies on the migration of Lebanese medical students between 2008 and 2012. So an important observation that he and his colleagues make in this series of papers is that there is an established culture of migration within Lebanese medical schools and societal expectations that good doctors have to be trained abroad. This explains why in 2005, long before the crisis, 96% of medical students intended to train abroad. This is in Lebanese medical schools. Training abroad gives a global competitive advantage, according to the authors of the papers, and a potential for higher earnings. For Lebanon, immigration of medical students was a way to also deal with a surplus of physicians. So the figure that you see on the left shows the global network of AUB collaborators that we built with the help of our librarians. It is based on the research publications by AUB faculty members between 2016 and 2020. And the size of the nodes represents the density of the network and a high number of collaborations with researchers in those countries. So of course, Lebanon is the thickest node, but after the United States, the UK, France, Germany, and Canada are the countries where our collaborators have their affiliation. So those also happen to be the migration destinations for educated Lebanese people. I don't think it's a coincidence. So a little bit of data for you, Joe. So the bar graph shows our student enrollment at AUB over a few years. We start in fall 2019, up until this fall, and I'm going to ask you to disregard this. This was not something meant for this audience. So the numbers at the top of each graph represent the total numbers of enrolled students at AUB at the beginning of the year, fall 2019, 20, 21, and then 22. And you see a steady decrease. The numbers, so as you can see, we have about 1,500 fewer students since before the crisis. This is about 17% of the total student population that we lost. So what's interesting, though, if we want to zoom in, the blue part of the graph at the bottom is the new undergraduate students. So in 2019, it was a peak high. We had 2,019 new entering undergraduate students. And the undergraduate student population is the bulk at AUB, as you can see, it's the gray and blue. So in fall 2020, we had a very sudden dip in the student population, almost 600 fewer new students matriculated at AUB right after the August 4 Beirut blast. Similarly, we lost some continuing students. So some of the students that were meant that we expected to come and continue, so some people dropped and left AUB right in the middle of their studies. So this was the biggest loss that we incurred, and we have been on a slow recovery since then, and our numbers are steadily on the rise. So fall 2021, and then now again in fall 2022, and we predict similar slow increases in the coming year. So this is despite the deepening economic and financial crisis. There are several factors that might contribute to this state of affairs, and I think we should go into them during the Q&A. For the mitigation measures, I think one of the things that I would like to mention is that one way we can keep delivering quality education is to provide financial assistance to those who could not otherwise afford to study here. And at AUB, we have been aggressively seeking funding opportunities for scholarships and to increase financial support since the start of the crisis. And our office, the Office of the Provost, has been quite involved in seeking these opportunities. And at this time, in 2022, 20% of our student body don't pay for their education at AUB. And the average, I think, about 50 or 60% of our students are on some kind of financial assistance. So at the same time, we are growing the opportunities for students to engage meaningfully beyond academics as part of their success journey in higher education. Because the landscape in higher education is changing while we are going through our crises. And one thing that happened after the Civil War is that AUB recovered, but it felt it was 10 years behind everybody else. And it took about 10 years to recover. So what we are trying to do while we are doing this is keep an eye on what's going on in the landscape, in the global landscape, and to try to introduce some innovations, curricular innovations, at the same time as we grow our financial assistance to the students, to try to keep them here and for them to be able to choose AUB over other places. Now coming to faculty. The situation with the faculty members is more serious, in fact. We are still dealing with faculty departures since travel resumed after the COVID pandemic. And in 2022, as you see in the last bar over there, we had the highest number of departures since 2019. So on the faculty side, we experienced a 33% decrease in the overall full-time faculty body since 2019. And based on data we gathered from the various faculties and schools, the top destination countries for departing faculty members are the USA, number 1, UAE comes second, France and Canada, then Qatar, then the UK. And we are hoping that we have seen the tail end of these accelerated departures, and we are trying to explore ways to try to slow down the process and maybe sometimes reverse it. So as I said earlier, I think we are hoping that we are starting to see indications that the trend of departures can be reversed. And this fall, we have over 30 colleagues who have returned to AUB after a leave of 1 semester or 2 years sometimes. They are mostly in the Faculty of Arts and Sciences and the Faculty of Medicine. This is a distribution by faculty over here. We conducted a survey with the returning faculty members to understand the reasons behind their decision to return, and we have identified as top reasons what you see over here: a strong sense of belonging to the institution. So one reason people wanted to come back, and you have testimonials here that we took verbatim from the survey, but so it's strong sense of belonging to the institution. The work environment at AUB, so people go and they think the grass is always greener on the other side, so they come back because it's not. And the efforts to restore faculty salaries. So as AUB has also started very early on to provide support for faculty in the form of fresh dollars, and so trying to develop a plan to restore faculty salaries. And so some faculty also, as you see at the bottom there, they just had left to complete research projects that they have with collaborators abroad, and they returned after those were completed. And people still are surprised. Oh, you want to come back? And the final thing I wanted to say is that the centers and institutes, you have a list of them here, and Hissam Faris is hosting us. They are part of our research and development enterprise at AUB, and they contribute significantly to the density of the global network that you see over here. And they are also an important facet of faculty retention. Building and supporting the research enterprise here is an attractor for faculty members. It's not just the salaries. And especially for those whose research is tied to a geography or context. So at AUB, we are committed to social impact and community service, and we are starting to prioritize research that, and I'm going to steal here something one of my colleagues has said, that we want to prioritize the kind of research that will succeed because it is happening at AUB and in Lebanon, not despite being at AUB and in Lebanon. This is the idea behind the new chair of forced displacement, which is a program funded by the IDRC, and that aims at making significant impact on the global debates on forced displacement. And what better place to study forced displacement than at AUB, and produce the kind of research that we want other people to read. As part of our application for this program, we did a scoping study to learn more about the work AUB colleagues are doing on the topic. And we found that each of our 7 faculties is engaged in research dealing with forced displacement, and AUB ranked among the top 25 most published institutions globally on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lina. That was, I think, really very interesting, not only to understand better AUB, and we're here, but also I think, and we'll talk about it maybe later on, how much this is comparable to other institutions and reflecting the global, the macro situation in the country. Mrs. Rustom, I mean, Lebanon has always been portrayed, and I always beware of cliches, but sometimes they are true, that Lebanon was the university and the hospital of the Middle East. Okay. How much is it still true today, seen from the healthcare community and system, ecosystem? And second, how dire is the impact of emigration on healthcare? We hear, and at AUB we are one case, we hear that some specialties are almost disappearing from the country. the quality of healthcare is suffering, not because only people cannot pay for it, but because equipments and let's say skills are starting to lack. What can you tell us about this hospital of the Middle East that is decaying today?
I think we are fighting for it, still fighting for it. Yes, as everyone said, the immigration of healthcare professionals is not new in Lebanon. Yeah, of course, we are now witnessing the most severe immigration of healthcare professionals ever for the last 3 years. The impact is huge on the system. As you were saying, yeah, we are losing key professionals. Before, historically, we used to lose, like, we had nurses leaving the country, doctors leaving the country. Now we have managers leaving, key professionals, highly specialized, and if these professionals leave, whether at the level, because we're no more talking at the level of the hospital, we're talking at the level of the entire system. So at the level of the Ministry of Public Health, the hospitals, and the primary care. And some very specialized professionals, doctors, physicists, any other IT engineers, biomedical engineers, managers, nurses, of course, and doctors leaving, the impact is huge, and some activities might be forced to be stopped because we do not have the specialty. And if we look at the situation in Lebanon, if we want to understand why is it so severe, and I fully agree that after the Beirut blast, we had a surge of people leaving the country because they lost hope in the country. They cannot see justice. They cannot see a future for themselves and for their kids. And if we look at the situation to understand it in an easy way, let's look at it from a supply and demand to understand why is it so severe. So if you look at the supply, we have very qualified healthcare professionals. We have a high education level. They speak 3 languages. We have an economic crisis that reduced tremendously the purchasing power of these persons. We did a study for WHO in October 2021. It showed that the professionals, the workers that are working at the Ministry of Public Health or at the primary health care, their salaries cover barely 10% of their cost of living. And for the professionals living in hospitals, private and public, it covers 20% of their cost of living. And we have this political instability and the blast and everything. And from the other side, we have a high demand. There's a worldwide shortage of healthcare professionals, and the COVID pandemic also exacerbated this shortage. Some countries come to recruit from Lebanon, such as France and Belgium, because we know, for example, for nurses, those that study at the St. Joseph University, they have French diploma. They have the BS, the Lebanese BS, but they have also the Diplôme d'État français. So this diploma allows them to work in France and Belgium without any prerequisite. They go and they work immediately. So let's take the example of France, of Belgium. They have chronic shortage of nurses. They will come and recruit from Lebanon. When they have these professionals that are in this situation that we described on the supply side, they have no choice. They will go. And you have, in the Gulf area, and KSA, UAE, there's an increased number of beds. They are investing, they are increasing the number of hospital beds, and when they increase the number of hospital beds, they need healthcare professionals. And since we have very well-educated professionals, and they speak Arabic, so they are ideal to be recruited for these countries. So we have this supply, we have this demand, so it becomes very obvious why we have this huge exodus after the crisis and everything. And I think, I wonder whether this high quality of healthcare professionals is a blessing or a curse on the country. Because, yeah, we are very proud to have very high educated professionals, but now they are leaving and we are suffering from this. The quality of care is also suffering from this. How we can, maybe we'll talk later about solutions. Okay, can I talk? Yeah, I think, yeah, for solutions, the same study that we did for WHO, the idea behind the study was, let's see how can we retain these professionals. And we looked at the savings that they can have when they go to France or UAE or etc. And for one single individual, they can have small savings. But if the family goes to this country, and if the healthcare professional is the sole provider for this family, the salary is not enough to cover the expenses of the family. So, and people are leaving, but they are not happy to leave. So maybe we can do something here. So reviewing the salaries, adjusting the salaries, and in this study, we evaluated how much would be the salary of each type of healthcare professional to cover only the cost of living, not like to have an extra life, the cost of living, and appeared that the salary must have at least 70% of it in US dollars to be sustainable over time. And now, unfortunately, in Lebanon, with the scarce resources and limited financial resources, no institution can pay the salaries, 70% of the salaries in US dollars. So institutions, healthcare institutions are trying to be very creative. Some institutions, like, for example, AUBMC, that have support from abroad, they can pay up to 35% in US dollar, but it's not the case of all the institutions. You have other hospitals that are really being creative. They see how much they had in revenues, in fresh dollars revenues per month, and the percentage of this revenue, they give it to the employees. And others, they cannot afford it. So I think something should be done at this level. And we know that the countries that are recruiting from Lebanon, they are not targeting the fresh grad professionals. They want them 2 years and above in terms of experience. So we must have a retention plan for the persons that have 2 years and above. So the solution is not easy. We have to be creative, but something shall be done, because if we do not act really quickly, we might have a big problem.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll come back to certain points. I would add to the description of these 3-4 last years also the impact of COVID that was, I mean, mainly weighing on the health sector. And I know, for example, that most of the nurses' attraction abroad, mainly in Europe, in France and Belgium, was due to the shortage of nurses there because of the COVID crisis. So there was a peak in demand that coincided with also a supply that was fueled by the crisis. So it's a very interesting moment. Dr. Ali Faqih, you've listened to all this. You're a macroeconomist, someone working on labor, on issues of also political economy transformations. If you take all this and add to it certain other issues, like, for example, sectors like engineering, sectors of lower education people, what is the sense you make of all this in terms of macroeconomy? What is the impact of this drain on our national economy today?
Okay, thank you. So basically, I will focus at the beginning at the micro level, because this is important. In my intervention, I will focus on the latest wave that started after Civil War in 1990. So basically, I agree with Dr. Lina. So migration can serve and served actually as a way to exit from misery for many Lebanese households. What happened after the Civil War? So basically, we witnessed a wave characterized by the immigration of youth. This is the main shape starting in 1990. In a study we published in 2018, we noticed that having a higher education diploma, particularly university degree, increases substantially the likelihood to migrate for youth. And we are all aware and familiar with the brain drain, and the most important significant is the loss in human capital stock. However, at the same time, what we notice the role of remittances that increase substantially over this period, even with volatility, but increase very substantially. So what is the main observation over the last 30 years? That we have contradictory scenarios and two contradictory observations. So drawing economic implications on the migration of Lebanese going out from Lebanon is really difficult to materialize for many reasons, because it's complex. For instance, on one hand, what do we have? the migration of skilled workers and particularly youth created a shortage in critical sector, particularly education, health, and high-tech industries. And this was observed more during the recent economic crisis. And also, something very critical at micro level, it reduced, we have some data from a report from government, it reduced the tax of the revenue tax. So basically, this led to a reduction in public infrastructure because we don't have enough public fund. And also, we have some reports, it reduced the competitiveness of Lebanese businesses to compete globally. And among other implications, it increased the cost of labor. So the remaining skilled workers may be hired at a higher salary, increase the cost of operations, and so on. However, what is the contradictory results here is that migration can serve as a substitute for the low rate of job creation. So in Lebanon, job creation is very low. And basically, if I'm not able to create job, I have higher education diploma, I will skip easily from Lebanon. And what will be the return? Some remittances. So the remittances, at one hand, contributed positively because it helped many Lebanese households to maintain consumption and to support poor family during the crisis. But at the same time, what are the negative implications of remittances? A highly dependent scenario on external source of income, very fragile source of income, led to create a non-productive sector. And this is the explanation why we have imported a lot over the last 10 and 12 years in Lebanon. And more importantly, it led to some negative implications related to the price of imports, goods, and other goods. So basically, the conclusion here and the observation, the net impact is unclear because it may go in multiple directions. So we have positive returns and we have a negative return. So now, if we go deeper to analyze the return at micro level, what we noticed in Lebanon, real estate sector benefited a lot over the last 15 years. So the growth of real estate and construction sector was built mainly because of the remittances and the investment of many Lebanese, migrant Lebanese. And also we noticed a positive return at micro level in many rural areas and villages. Many businessmen and many Lebanese migrants, they invested to improve the infrastructure of their villages. So this is at rural sector. And even for the banking sector that we have a lot of critiques and they participated in the current crisis and so on, they participated largely in the growth of banking sector because remittances went through transfer through the banking sector and so on. So basically, these are some sectors that were affected overall, but the main two observations are the impact on skilled workers of youth that complicated the job creation and the competitiveness of businesses in Lebanon, and the role of remittances. So these are the most important economic implications that need a further elaboration, a detailed survey that's not available currently in Lebanon. We don't have any detailed micro survey to monitor the sectoral and deep impact of migration. So regarding future, what is next? So basically, should the government intervene, in my opinion, and based on a number of analysis we did, and currently we are trying to elaborate, is migration a barrier for Lebanese economy? Not at all. So this is a Lebanese youth, when they invest more into higher education, particularly at university level, they believe that having a university diploma will allow them to get the so-called immigration lottery, because this is the only way where they can exit and they can have some return. So basically, due to the impossibility to expand the economic size of our economy and to have better economic opportunities, we believe that migration is a way to complete what we are not able to have as having skilled laborer in the economy and to create jobs, hoping that in the future new policymakers and new directions that will that will try to focus on creating jobs that they are productive for the economy, trying to improve the transition between education and labor market. These are the key aspects in order to re-attract the skilled labor, and focusing a lot on the young population, because this is a main feature of the latest wave of migrations that started in 1990 compared to the previous 3 waves that are commonly known. So this is a unique for Lebanese, for the modern Lebanese economy, because of its implication on what is next, how we can move forward in the Lebanese economy, and what type of jobs and sectors we need to focus on. So this is what I have regarding my say on, so it has 2 implications at micro level and at macro level, but the main observations, they are remittances and the return on skilled laborers in the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Faki. We'll get back to some of the issues. I mean, one quick observation, what is also very difficult today with the increasing cash economy that we are living in, is that the remittances are unseen. We are unable to measure them because they don't go to through the financial sector, through the formal banking sector. They go from pocket to pocket to OTM or Western Union, so it's very difficult to weigh that. So that's why we hear a lot of fantasy about also the figures that are coming in money terms to Lebanon. Just a quick note on organization. I'm told that, in fact, most of you, probably some of you have questions. The way we will do that is that you have to scan this IQ code here with your phones. It will open a window. You will put up your questions. We will receive them somewhere. Technology is amazing today. And then they will be read and our panelists will answer them. This is right, Yaya? Okay, this is the way you should do it. And let me take a round of quick Q&A, if you allow me. Dr. Samaha, I told you, I mean, one question of comparison between, on the longer span of time, the 150 years, we said that previously it was mainly unskilled people who were fleeing, and today they are more skilled and they have higher education diplomas. How much is it true and how to compare that? The second element of comparison I would like you to weigh on is the return of these people. I mean, it's very difficult to measure the level of attachment they still keep with the country, previously and today. But how many used to return or to come back to their villages, to their towns, etc.? And today, how can we expect, or what can we expect of these people to come back? I mean, is it really different? Because in fact, the first wave of emigration to Latin America, they never came back also. So maybe it's similar to today.
Yes, we have different types actually of people who have emigrated. When we started at the 19th century, and I have statistics, I will show it to you now. So basically the first wave of emigrators were uneducated, if I can say, were mostly farmers, technicians, and people who wanted to emigrate to have a better life, to have a better income, and they emigrated basically to South America, some to Australia, to Canada, and they were not skilled people. I don't have university diplomas, I can say. So with the evolution of emigration, we can say that now we have more skilled people who have traveled. And if we get back to statistics, I can tell you that today, 40% of the people who have emigrated between 1992 and 2007 have a university degree. And 19% of them are aged between 25 and 35. And the third are women. And this is new. This is at 1992. The return of that actually on our economy and their will to come back, we can say, I agree with you, that some of them are coming back actually. It has a good, some of them are coming back because they're not happy, because it's not sustainable when you go with your family. It's easier if you go alone and try to work and bring back money to the family, because life is getting more expensive everywhere. I mean, even here in Lebanon. So a lot of people are sending back their families, they're sending money, they're having projects. This is why the production in Lebanon have evolved a lot after the blast. And I can say most of them, not most of them, but some of them are coming back. It has a good financial income actually to the country, bringing back fresh dollars. But if we compare the positive side and the negative side, I would still believe that the negative side is a lot higher than the positive side. We have a financial income, they're attached, they have roots, most of them have families, they send money to their families, they avoid to have a bigger need in the country, of course, but that would create a society that would rely on the people living abroad. And in every family in Lebanon, I can bet we have at least one person who have left the country and who's working abroad, whether in Canada, in the States, in Australia, in the Arab countries, in Europe, and bringing back money to the country. Not a lot of them would definitely come back now. Maybe they would retire in Lebanon, and that would make it a retirement country, which is not good for the production and the economy of the country. But yet they're bringing back money, and we have started to see, as my colleague has mentioned, some of them that are coming back because they felt that something has to be done here. And we should start acting on that because the peak was very high and it was dangerous. We all felt it at all levels. I mean, of course, in the medical sector and in the health sector, but also on education, even in the fields that are truly and directly related to the country. I can say, for example, for lawyers and judges, we have lost a lot of judges, surprisingly, because now their salaries are very low. And we know that in Lebanon, we have a special rule of law that's applied mainly in the country, which is normal. A lot of them have resigned and have left to work in universities, in law firm, to work as assistants, and some of them are brilliant judges and brilliant lawyers who couldn't find their way out. I can give an example. In the Court of Appeal of Tripoli in 2020, we have one judge who had $80 as a salary. So if he has to go to the court twice a week, as it's required by law, and to work on his files where he has no electricity, and to have $80 a week, and he's a brilliant judge. He resigned at the age of 56 to work as an assistant in a law firm in UAE at $5,000 a month. So it's definitely has a good revenue for his family. It's better than $80, but I don't think he deserves that at the end of his career. And just an example. And that are fields where we had no immigration. For lawyers and judges, we couldn't emigrate because we're studying the Lebanese law, so obviously we're applying law. When I did my PhD in comparative law, we all understood that we're going to be working in this country. We're going to comparing the rules of law to making them evolve. But when you see even lawyers and judges that are leaving the country to work somewhere else because they need to live, they need to earn money. And it's a need. Definitely they're bringing money, but we're losing an excellent quality. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for this grim picture. Dr. Shweri, Lina, two quick questions. One on the attractiveness of other universities in the region. The slide you showed, UAE, Qatar, etc. How much is this impacting on the, the attraction, the magnet effect of faculty here in Lebanon, seen from AUB? And second, if we have to innovate solutions for, mitigating or coping with this, is learning from afar, online learning, all this kind of new methods enough to cope with the drain? I mean, can we retain professors by having them living abroad but still working on a campus in Beirut, for example?
Thank you for a very difficult question. Let me start by the facts. When I was surprised actually when I looked at those results that for the first time, and that's something different from before. For the first time, we see UAE and Qatar intrude on the list of destinations for AUB faculty members. And I would say because this was also, it includes the Faculty of Medicine, clinical professors, that is actually and nursing as well. And so those are countries that were destinations for some of our doctors and nurses and those who practice, who also teach in the Faculty of Nursing and the School of Nursing and the Faculty of Medicine. So not many faculty members left to the countries in the GCC. And so that is also a continuity from what we know in terms of higher education and immigration. But now coming to the retention strategy and using, we did use during the COVID period and right after, when the departures of faculty members accelerated, a lot of faculty members left with their families. It wasn't possible to say to people, you have to come back, now we're coming back. And the university decided to be very flexible in terms of allowing those who have settled and are uncertain about bringing their families back to actually teach remotely. And we were mostly on and off remotely. And so when we returned to in-person, that was in October 2021, then at the time we also said that we were going to be flexible, but it has to be a very good reason for people to stay. And now we are a bit 1 year later, and that has created problems. Because you have people who are here, they're coming every day, they are meeting, and they are also taking burdens, administrative burdens, on behalf of their colleagues who are settled abroad. And while they are teaching, they are not participating in the life of their departments. And now we are starting to rethink the strategy. At the same time, we don't have, I think we should move towards policies for remote work. But that means you have to examine the kinds of contracts, the kinds of expectations. They will have to be different from those who are here, and we are not there yet.
Okay, thank you. You wanted to say very, very quickly.
Very quickly, I just have to say one thing, that the Ministry of Education and Higher Education in Lebanon denied the right to the Lebanese universities to teach remotely. So we're not legally entitled to teach online anymore. This is
Okay.
sadly.
You'll have this debate after
Can
the
I
session.
just
Please,
say,
quickly.
in the HOPES project, it was very interesting because I was very surprised. The HOPES project, as I said, the stakeholders meetings were held between January 22 and 2022 and May 2022, and they did a survey. One of the stakeholder meetings was with students, and they did a survey that we shared across universities with the students. And it turns out that 68% of the students were studying online, even though the universities had decided that there was no online teaching and learning. So something was broken in that system as well.
Thank you. Mrs. Rustum, you talked about the effects of the medical corps leaving and what it creates, and the question of the salaries that they earn in local hospitals. If we look at it from the public's point of view, it's a very, sad question. But can we say that people are starting in Lebanon to, unfortunately, die because of the shortage of healthcare? Is there a danger for the society coming from that, or we're still far away from this red line?
Yeah, no, I don't think we are that close to the red line. I think we have, the system is robust. So the healthcare system in Lebanon is not weak. We have a structure that is now still working as it should work. Of course, we don't have the highest quality of care everywhere, but I know that in big institutions, the level is still very good. The risk is more in the remote areas, because when you are in Beirut and Mount Lebanon, it's people are trying to deal with this. We have highly qualified professionals. If you have two leaving and the remaining are here, so no, I don't think it's that sad, but I see that the risk is much higher in the remote areas, because they are not able to pay fresh dollars, and people are leaving, and they need to treat people, because if you go to Akkar, you have 1 to 2 hospitals in Akkar. They cannot close. They need to continue working as they can. I cannot say that there's a risk on the quality of care because we didn't study it, but I think, yeah, there might be a risk.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Faqih, and then we'll open up the question, the floor. A last question, it's a bit difficult to say this way, but is Lebanon doomed macroeconomically? The economic model, as we call it, the namuzaj, is Lebanon doomed to always export its youth in order to make a macroeconomic equilibrium? Is it a country that will never be able to retain people?
Yeah, taking the current economic model, this is how it works. So you produce skilled laborers, new graduate that will not be able to stay in the country because you don't have equilibrium and a place for them to be productive and to contribute to the economic cycle. So as a result, the model works as follows. So they will migrate and they will have some positive and negative return to the economy. So this is how it works. So it needs a different economic plan, a different economic context in the country. So keeping everyone graduating with this large number of universities and the graduates with the current economic decomposition of sectors will not lead to, will destroy the equilibrium indeed. The economic equilibrium is stable in Lebanon. This is a model. So we had a pattern over the last 3 decades to produce youth and to immigrate youth and to create non-productive jobs that will not contribute in the business cycle and will not have any economic return in the long run. So what could be the implication in the long run? In the long run, so basically you have to adopt a number of policies, particularly to revisit your, maybe it's a different context, your higher institutions of education, to go deeper in different sectors to examine what types of jobs needed for the current graduate who will remain in the country. But as is currently, the model works nicely, even during the crisis, through migration channels beside other channels. So I forget to mention regarding remittances, it's not always positive. So basically, most of remittances that went into Lebanon used for consumption. So we didn't benefit enough to use our remittances through investment. So we know all the story what happened. Additionally, it contributed to the production, to the creation of non-production sectors in Lebanon, mainly the import. So there are negative implications of remittances. We are in equilibrium currently. It's stable, but we get some noise, not some noise, a noise because of the economic and financial crisis. But the model remains the same with additional number of people leaving the country because of the crisis. And one last point, and actually the intention to remigrate is important. So we notice in many surveys done on this section of migration in Lebanon, they tend to ask individuals, if you go back to your economy, what is the probability or likelihood to re-immigrate because of reason 1, 2, and 3? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we still have 20 minutes for your questions and answers. So as we said, you will read the questions that were received through the system, and are they addressed to one of the speakers or?
No, maybe you can just
Okay.
moderate them. So the first question is AUB or maybe other universities considering offering online degrees in order to reach out to Lebanese students and others abroad and creating an additional source of income for the faculty?
I think we partly answered this question. I don't know if, Lina, you want to add something, but I think you answered it already. I mean, when we talked about the online learning, please.
I would just say for the universities that are not 100% Lebanese, like for example LAU and AUB, because they're foundations in the United States, they can provide online classes. But for us, for example, as NDU, we're a Lebanese university, so legally we're not entitled to give any course online. The only thing that we're authorized to give online is given by the center called LLC, Long Life Learning Center, or the Continuous Education Program in LAU and something
And
like that
AUB.
in AUB. So legally, we're not entitled to give any course online up till today. Thank you. It's the ministry. There's no logic.
Please, go ahead.
Many people travel to gain experience and come back, but sometimes they go and never come back. What is the role of embassies and international communities in this case?
Maybe you, Ali?
So, I'm not sure if it has some economic implications because it's a win-win situation for the host economy and the origin country. So basically, they contribute in the labor market in the host economy. I was in Canada. I spent 7-8 years. I'm familiar with how the markets work, and I worked with the government for 1 year. So basically, they substitute local laborers, and also they can compete with natives. So basically, when you have shortage, it's very beneficial for the economy to attract migrants. And also here, when you have deficiency in your shortage with the existing pool of forced refugees, you can substitute. So this is how it works, and it has economic benefits in both countries, I believe.
Would add the person, I mean, I'm not a specialist, but I mean, intuitively, and also because I've lived abroad, but it depends a lot on, I think, the welcoming countries. I mean, the type of welcoming countries. The farther you go, probably you won't come back. And European immigration, you could come back. GCC immigration, you will come back because you can't stay. So it depends also on the legal structure of the welcoming country and the cultural let's say, integration and the level of, let's say, integration and rootedness in the welcoming society. It has to do with this. There's no question by, it's... Okay, go ahead, please. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Unfortunately, so far, the mountains in Lebanon were moved by quarries and other issues, unfortunately. So miracles could happen, but not nice miracles.
What is the role or policy of the Lebanese government towards mitigating the negative effects?
What is the role of?
What is the role or policy of the Lebanese government towards mitigating the negative effects?
Dr. Ali.
So if I may, so basically the government is silent for a reason, because this is how it works. We let people go out because of some benefits, some returns. We can't block people, and we can't restrict individuals and youth particularly to migrate. So we let people to seek higher diploma, regardless where you study, at top institutions, low quality institutions, and we have exit plan for maintain the current system, basically, for the corrupted people who are in the government.
Yes, this is why I think, I mean, we said it from a historical point of view, an economic point of view, and other point of views. This is why Lebanon is quote unquote, structurally a country of immigration. I mean, there are jokes, there are theater plays. I mean, there's a very famous play by Ziad Rahbani in the 70s about I mean, people leaving, and what is this country that in fact is manufacturing people to emigrate. I don't want to get into politics, but today one of the main candidates to presidency is openly saying that this country is rich because it exports engineers everywhere in the world. So this is a model, and as long as this is the culture, we'll continue to bleed and lose our people. You wanted to say something?
I just want to mention also the role in keeping the Lebanese university in the state that it is, and one of the major, so it's a negative role that the government is playing by reducing the budget of the Lebanese university, and that was before even the crisis happened. So
there are immigrants and refugees in Lebanon. Can they play a role in providing a skilled workforce?
This is a very tricky question. Maybe who will please volunteer? Go ahead.
Yes. Just before answering that question, I say the reason why we are bleeding also is because we have impotent people governing us, sadly. And I think most of us agree on that. The immigration people that are living here in Lebanon, they're not so much skilled, if I can say. They can help in many fields, but not, for example, in education, not in the medical or health sector. They can help in other fields, but not in this one, sadly.
But this is, if you allow me, a very sensitive question in Lebanon. I'm sorry, maybe I'll be a bit politically incorrect, but also probably if Lebanese would accept to do certain jobs in Lebanon, first of all, much less would leave, and probably this question of inflow, outflow would be a little bit rebalanced. But this is a completely other question. It has to do with culture, with the social outlook we have on them, and with salaries, wages, and etc. But it's a real question that has to do with the model also, I think. I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly. So if you don't have any other choice and you need to benefit from the stock of immigrants and refugees here, so you have specific option, limited option, where in the agriculture sector on borders. So we had in the past a lot of plans from the previous governments how to increase the capacity of agriculture sector and building a new industrial cities. So the only location is on the border in the Bekaa area with cheap labor. So if we benefit, if they are here, they are here. So you don't have any option. So let the policy recruit them in specific sectors where you work on agriculture and industrial. Other than that, it will not work. In education, it's difficult. In health sector, it's complicated, and so on.
We tried in the health sector for the nurse aides, so you know the nurses that bath people, bath patients, and answer when they call the nurse, etc. And we tried this in remote hospitals, and they were not accepted by the patients. So it was very, very difficult, and they cannot. They only can write and read in Arabic, and it was much complicated.
okay, next one.
Is there a specific sector of professionals that are emigrating from Lebanon? For example, are we seeing a larger Lebanese immigration from STEM fields?
I think all of you could answer this one by one. I mean, you know?
I mean, I know that we have people now, a huge shortage in ICT, so in information technology, certainly, and that's resulted in the impossibility of hiring people, not just a mass exodus of the skilled staff that we have, but impossible to hire replacements. So, yeah.
Any idea of the destination of IT people?
The GCC countries, yes.
Okay.
No, mainly nurses, but also the IT. IT are very, very hard to replace. And you know, like for radiotherapy, you have the physicist that does the calculation of the radiation, and this is a very advanced skill. So it's very difficult to replace them. The position that are in direct connection with the patients are very hard to fill, and where we need a lot of skills like this physicist or the IT.
Doctor, you mentioned, Dr. Smaha, the lawyers and the judges also, which is a very interesting point, and Dr.
Basically from all sectors, but what I noticed also, the financial sector, top financial analysts are rare to find them recently, so they migrate mainly to GCC countries. I know a couple of people at the Central Bank of Lebanon, they were equipped with advanced skills, so they left. Some of them, they returned to the United States. Also, I can give an example, at our university, we lost a lot of academic staff. Imagine web editor, stuff like that. So they want also, particularly to GCC countries and universities operating there.
I just will add also psychologists are also, we're losing a lot of them.
Which is needed today in the country, unfortunately.
What can you tell us about the impact of immigration on the non-immigrants? All the partners, kids, parents who remain alone for a long period of time, social burden, depression, loneliness.
This is a fascinating question. I don't know if any one of you could answer, but I mean, we can tell stories about it. We all know people who are living this very badly. Here, maybe on that point, of course, we can't infer any macro conclusions, but this is by observation, sociological observation. Lately, it's one of the reasons for return. Many people we know are coming back because they feel that having a family between here and abroad is destroying the family, and some of them are completely shutting down this model and bringing back the kids or the wives or the husband, etc., and moving back to live together, which is maybe a good phenomenon, provided they can make a living.
If I may, so basically what we noticed also recent people who came back to Lebanon because of economic reasons and host economies and host countries. So cost of living became very expensive. I know a lot of people in Canada, Cyprus, Europe. So they came back because level of inflation exceeded a lot of thresholds and limit in these countries. But historically, when people left, always we have this depression and this nostalgia to our families. This is common. What is not common between now and before, close to depression, and because mainly of inflation and bad economic conditions in host economies. So this is the main reason to returning to Lebanon. It depends also on sectors. At university levels, packages may be different in top institutions, so they need to maintain skilled faculty who are productive in research and so on. But in other sectors, it depends on the amount of fresh you give. It matters.
I just wanted to add actually that there is the factor of COVID. Something happened during the pandemic, and I think some people changed and made decisions about how they want to live their lives that they could accept before. So the separation of families that you were talking about, I know, and this is again from anecdotal observation of people around me, people are now, I know that I have colleagues who now refuse to be separated from their partners because they don't want to bear the burden of the family alone because they did that during COVID, or people who want to be reunited with their elderly parents because of the experience after COVID.
Interesting, because this shows that, in fact, any work on migration, emigration, I'm talking to you, sir, here has to be contextualized and put in history and in geographic place. I don't think we can compare anything to anything always. I mean, COVID is definitely one event that was a game changer in this phenomenon. Are there questions left?
Taking into account there is more fresh USD on the market from abroad, what is the impact on public finances if there is no real taxation system?
Exactly. So the economic system is changing gradually, but not into a different economic model. So basically, the government would like to tax the increased amount of fresh in the market in order to generate revenue for operations, for government to remain in place, and for politicians to fund public servants who are corrupted in the first place. So this is how it works. So we don't have progressive, per se, a taxation system in Lebanon. They try to implement it, and some institutions, they complain, but it is imposed for a reason, to maintain the current situation and in hope a solutions that will come in the near future. But it's not a correct model to rely on.
And also, thank you, and also because this cash inflow is not coming through regular channels. So they're not coming through banks or they're frequently from pocket to pocket, which make it harder to track and to pay taxes on it, bearing in mind that legally it's illegal to impose taxes on a currency different than the local currency. So if we're having fair, because at one moment the Ministry of Finance tried to do that by imposing an amount that have to be taxed in fresh dollars for the amounts that are paid in fresh dollars. Well, that is illegal. That's against the Constitution and against the rule of law. You have to pay taxes in the local currency. We don't pay in France our taxes in dollars. So why do we pay our taxes in Lebanon in dollars or in euros? Thank you.
Yeah, good observation.
Are there any other countries going through the same thing as Lebanon? Can we learn from any examples, both negative and positive?
We have specialists here, but if I can weigh, I mean, you have countries that are exporters in Europe, not only in the third world. I mean, Italy has been one, mainly the south of Italy. Ireland has been one for a long time. Cuba, Latin America, also within, I mean, inside Latin America and from Latin America to elsewhere. So no, Lebanon is probably, but I think what's unique to Lebanon is probably the magnitude, the proportion. I mean, and probably also the duration of the phenomenon. Italy and Ireland had emigrations during the economic crisis of Europe in the 20s, and then it stopped. You don't have Italians today going to live in New York, but Lebanese will continue to go where they used to go for 150 years, and this is probably the Lebanese uniqueness of the migration model. Maybe the last question?
Yes, yeah. Unfortunately, we're short on time. So, a question to the panelists. Why are you still here? Why didn't you leave? Dr. Faqih, why did you come back?
No, I don't want to. So basically, we stayed here because for a number of reasons. We believe in our institutions. In the first place, they are doing a great job, and they support us in this difficult time. Family reason, it's important, but personally, I spent many years abroad, and always it should work. So you visit, you come back, but ultimately the main reason is economic and because of the institution. If the opposite was observed, definitely we would not be here. So we love the institution, but the institution is not supporting us, we believe. But there was a possibility to support us, to remain and to maintain productive people or productive faculty and so on. This is from my side, and I believe it's based on incentives. So they created an incentive for other people. And this is the same for private sector, because what we noticed when comparing what happened in the private sector at the beginning of the crisis and until recently, the amount of private companies paying a fresh dollar to employees increased substantially, even with a small amount. This also contributed for many workers and employees to remain. Thank you.
Mrs. Rassoum?
Yes,
If you have.
I will not give you a cliche answer for many reasons. For personal reasons, I like this country. I like my family and friends, and I'm happy to live here. I was not pushed because if I had economic, financial reasons, I would have left. But I wasn't pushed to leave. I have my own company, and we managed to have all our incomes in fresh dollars. So financially, I can afford to stay here. And I love this country, and I still believe in it.
You know?
I think I have the same answer. So personal reasons are the top reason why I stayed. I actually never asked myself the question whether I would leave. And as my colleague has said on the panel, I was not pushed either. I mean, of course, I think that there are situations where people don't have a choice, but I am privileged and lucky to have a choice, and I know that. So I will be staying as long as I can.
For me, it's purely emotional. I was pushed to leave because I have my law firm instead of being a dean of the Faculty of Law. They wanted me to leave, but I don't want to leave. I love this country, and I want a lot of them to leave before I leave, so I wouldn't leave. Thank you.
If I may add my own example, I have spent 21 years abroad, and I came back, believe it or not, Nina knows it, in the middle of the crisis, Beirut blast, and I came back in 2020 to AUB, partly thanks to AUB, and I thank you, but partly also because I was hired to live abroad, and I wanted another lifestyle that only Lebanon can provide. I had the chance to be able to do it, but I don't regret it, and probably I won't leave again. This is it. So thank you very much for your attendance, and join us for a word of conclusion, please, sir. Thank you.
As you're about to say, you can join us now. There's a networking reception to your right to my left. But I just wanted to say, I want to thank all of you so much for taking the time and coming here today to talk about this, this fascinating but very kind of difficult and topic. And Samantha and I will just be passing out. We've got some small token appreciation of chocolates for yourselves. It's to come up here and with your expertise and bare your souls. I don't know if it's an equal sufficient for that, but I just really want to say thank you. And I really want to thank Samantha DeCaria and Francesca Habaiter from the Embassy of Canada, and of course Yara Murad at the IFI, who's been so helpful in creating this opportunity for us. And thank you. Thank you very much.